Welcome to another episode of Full Build Friday, where I try to build a character from a comic, game, or similar source using the baseline rules of Pathfinder 2nd Edition and the Path Builder app. Welcome back, one and all, or welcome in for those checking out this channel for the first time. We are still exploring some of the options from Howl of the Wild, and this week features not only a new ancestry, but a neat little class option as well, as we dive into the world of AFK Arena to build Anoki, the Blood Guard.
My life for the herd!
I've built a character from AFK Journey on the channel before, which is the child of this gacha phone game that I still find myself enjoying. These characters end up having quite a bit to them, so let's take a look at build goals for this Warhorn wielding warrior. Anoki the Bloodguard is a member of the Mauler faction, a race of animal people descended from alchemically altered humans, with Anoki himself resembling a bull-like humanoid. He was the son of a great warrior and guardian of the Mauler chieftain, who expected Anoki to follow in his footsteps. But when the chieftain was assassinated, Anoki's father was shamed by his great failure, and left his son. Anoki has since taken up his father's warhorn and joined the Bloodguard while searching for the assassin that drove his father to abandon him. His ultimate ability is Savage Stampede, which summons a horde of Iron Jaws that damage and knock back enemies. If they manage to knock enemies into a wall, they are stunned and damaged even further. His Raging Stomp ability damages an area around him as he stomps his foot, and then eventually stuns enemies if he gets them with its third stomp. Born to Lead is much more supportive in nature, and simply creates an aura that buffs the attack rating, speed, and damage reduction of the allies in his area. Further support abilities are found in his Horn of War, which he triggers at the start of a fight to shield his allies. Unlocking his Bloodguard's honor allows him to cast this ability multiple times throughout the fight, instead of just at the start. Rounding out his abilities is War Fury, gained from his signature item, which increases his attack rating for each nearby ally, while also increasing his defense rating for each nearby enemy. Bringing this all together, Anoki is defined as a tank, while still having very solid support capabilities, able to shield and enhance his teammates while growing stronger in their presence. He's also able to lock down enemies, and can even use his Warhorn to summon a stampede of beasts. This looks pretty promising, this looks like it should be interesting, so let's see what we can make out of it. As promised, we're using a hot W, as the kids say, ancestry to build Anoki as a Minotaur, one of the two large ancestries introduced in this book, and the more traditional large ancestry at that. From this, he will take the Slab Soul Heritage to gain access to the Raise Slabs action, a neat ability that can hurt and potentially knock enemies prone, which I think is a fine early fit for his Raging Stomp. His ancestry feat is the slightly less exciting Cattle Speech, taken because I think it matches nicely with his ability to influence large stampeding herd beast as we see through his ultimate. They're not cows, admittedly, but the wording of this ability might give you the necessary wiggle room. As we look into the background of this burly bloke, I settled on Guard to reference both his title and the role that he was raised for throughout his life. This background makes him trained in intimidation and warfare lore, through which he gains the Quick Coercion skill feat. This is a case where I'm not sure the skill feat is particularly appropriate for the character, but it comes for free from the background, so we'll just rock and roll with it. That leaves Anoki's class, and despite him being a tank, I settled on the Bard class, and chose the brand new Zoophonia Muse. This new Muse also comes from Hot W, and grants the Bard the Summon Animal spell. While this is limited to a single creature, it's at least a step in the right direction for recreating his Savage Stampede ultimate. On the topic of abilities, Courageous Anthem is honestly a fantastic fit for the enhanced attack rating of his Born to Lead aura, obviously with it being an aura, and with the way it empowers his teammates. Now, bards don't get to choose their feat at first level, but they do gain one based on their muse, which in this case will be Zoophonic Communication, letting Anoki use his performance to influence and generally communicate with animals, which isn't super critical, but it is absolutely fun. More importantly, Anoki does get to choose some spells, and you can get some defensive abilities here with Forbidding Ward or Protection. There's offensive options such as Haunting Him, and a punny choice by taking Bullhorn. But the most important spell this early on will be Kinetic Ram, which I think is a solid initial option for his Raging Stomp alongside his Raised Slabs ability. As for his skills, bards are automatically trained in occultism and performance, and he'll pick up acrobatics, athletics, nature, and survival, the latter two representing the rugged and wild homelands of the Maulers. Charisma is his primary ability score, but he'll keep his strength even with it, and also wants some constitution since he is meant to be a tank. This may seem a little mad, but aside from starting with a slightly lower AC, I actually don't think it's too bad, meaning we can forge ahead into second level. While I stand by the choice of Zoophonium Muse at first level, we're going to look at Multifarious Muse here to give Anoki the Polymath Muse. This also nets him the Versatile Performance Bard feat, which very handily expands the use of his performance skill, letting him get the most bang for his bucking bronco. Speaking of which, he takes Tame Animal for his first skill feat, based on his ability to bring a mighty herd to his beck and bellowing call. This lets him form a bond with an appropriate animal to potentially resemble one of his Iron Jaws. In the game of AFK Arena, Anoki is listed as a tank, but Bard doesn't really facilitate that. We'll do the best we can, but toughness as his 3rd level general feat helps make him at least a little bit sturdier, maybe enough to survive a few more hits. This level does also come with 2nd rank spells, as well as signature spells, the first of which will be his summon animal to call forth greater beasts. I settled on Loose Times Arrow at Noise Blast as his 2nd rank spells. The former will let him speed up his allies, hopefully allowing them more actions to use on their attacks, while the latter is a nice damaging burst spell that has some lockdown potential, which is mostly limited to its critical failure effect. His first skill increase then goes to nature, simply given his own appearance as well as his animalistic allies. At 4th level, Anoki expands on his Polymath Muse to take Esoteric Polymath as his class feat, which lets him add to and swap out spells from his repertoire. This might not seem like a fit to any of his abilities, but I have a reason behind taking it that will become much clearer towards the end of the build. Following up Tame Animal is Train Animal as his skill feat this time around. The previous choice let him befriend an animal, while this allows him to expand the tricks and moves that his chosen animal can perform. Again, this harkens back to his ultimate Elise a little bit, and the whole herd that he summons with it, even if there are other concepts that will better serve in that regard upcoming. Now, our mighty Minotaur Mauler lugs around quite the warhorn, and to give him a hand with that, he can use the Beast of Burden Ancestry feat at 5th level, which increases his bulk limits by 4. Double what Hefty Hauler would get you, though I do think the effects would stack. From his brand spanking new 3rd rank spells, our horn hauling hero has Haste, letting him increase the attack speed of his allies based on his Born to Lead ability. A number of his other abilities though do have the ability to stun, and I think Paralyze makes the most sense to signature here, letting him lock down a singular target, though this lacks the associated effects that usually trigger his stuns. In regards to his skill increase, he'll become an expert in performance, given the multitude of ways that he is able to use it between zoophonic communication and his versatile performance. Anoki is able to cobble together more of his Born to Lead ability by taking Rallying Anthem. This affords him another composition cantrip that can be used to bolster the defenses of his allies, but more importantly comes with a small degree of resistance, matching the damage reduction of his ability. Unfortunately, he will have to choose between Rallying Anthem or Courageous Anthem, but this is still a very solid get. He does start branching out with his skill feats here, taking Intimidating Glare at this level, which he'll be able to use his performance with based off of his versatile performance feat. This is also a great time to take Perfection again, as it causes the target to shed its defense buffing effect around them, again playing into the aura of his Born to Lead ability. We're still looking at ways to make Anoki tankier, which leads to the use of Fast Recovery at 7th level. Admittedly, this doesn't do a ton to protect him in the moment, but I think it at least better helps to sell that concept as a whole. Furthermore, he becomes a Master in Nature through this level's skill increase. It is a little difficult to represent Anoki's War Fury ability, but I had an idea for it. Call and Response is a spell shaping feat that lets Anoki allow one of his companions to take up a song that he starts. This might seem like a bit of a stretch, but I feel that it plays into the concept of Anoki being bolstered by his teammates. On the other hand, getting the increased defenses from enemies is way harder. He can get some defenses through his Terrifying Resistance skill feat, again permitted through his versatile performance, and I guess you could say this is a way for him to gain defenses from enemies, but that's a bit of a stretch even for me. I think Minotaurs might have access to some of my new favorite ancestry feats, and they get access to the super fun, friendly fling at 9th level, which is highly similar to the Barbarian's friendly toss, but does require Anoki to deal a bit of damage instead. Nevertheless, I do love launching allies into the midst of the fray after you've buffed them through composition and maybe some other spells. On the topic of spells, it still has two good ones that can serve as Anoki's Raging Stomp. Of the two, I would signature Synaptic Pulse. It doesn't deal damage, but it has the incapacitation trait, which is the main reason behind signaturing it, and it inflicts a stun with an emanation. It has the added benefit of only affecting enemies, a regrettably rare limiter on some of these spells. Alternatively, there is Repelling Pulse, another emanation, which doles out some damage and can knock people back, but doesn't differentiate between friend or foe. Moving on to skills, and following his use of Terrifying Resistance from last level, Anoki will increase his performance to Master for this level. Bards can feel a little starved when it comes to action economy. They often want to throw out a spell while also keeping whatever composition buff they have got going. Adding on top of that the summon animal that Anoki is using for now to simulate his Savage Stampede skill, we need something to cheat out more actions. Zoophonic Composition is a new feat that lets us do exactly that at 10th level. It's rather bizarrely limited to once per day, but it lets him follow up a composition spell with a free action to sustain one of his summoned animals, which is again important for the Bard in particular. Further aiding his action economy is Battle Cry as a skill feat, letting him throw out a Demoralize as a free action before the fight even fully unfurls. Between this and Courageous Anthem, he can make a solid swing right at the start. And helping that out, helping him take advantage of this early fight condition, is Incredible Initiative at 11th level. This will help him act first and maybe throw out buffs and some spells while the enemy is vulnerable from their penalty. He does start looking at new skills to increase and can become an expert in athletics, feeling right given this Boisterous Bull's bulk and the knockback and other effects in his kit. Further supporting Anoki's action economy, he takes Quicken Casting at 12th level. This is another once per day effect, but it superbly supports our Singing Steer's successive spell slinging. He then uses his strength to his advantage with Intimidating Prowess as his skill feat, giving him a bonus on performance checks to demoralize. I'm not sure he would get the increased bonus since Versatile Performance simply lets performance count for these skill requirements, and not other aspects of the feat. 13th level holds another fun ancestry feat in the form of Goring Charge, which lets Anoki dash into the fight and deal some persistent bleed damage. This is admittedly reliant on a strike, which Anoki is lacking a bit as a bard, but I thought it was too cool to pass up. With 7th rank spells though, now is a good time to heighten haste, since it lets him potentially quicken his entire team. Another skill increase there makes him a master in athletics, so that this burly bard can better bully the baddies. For our 14th level class feat, we can use Musical Summons, another feat linked to his Zoophonium Muse, so that Anoki can summon a creature and cast a composition all on a single turn. Now, this is a distinct action, meaning that he can't combine it with any of his spell shaping feats, but it is still some nice action compression. The focus I've had on Intimidation thus far is largely because Anoki wields a Warhorn and I like equating that to intimidating foes, which works particularly nicely with his versatile performance. With that being the case, Anoki takes Terrified Retreat as his skill feat, letting him send foes fleeing with his fearsome features. I can easily envision Anoki blasting his horn as the enemy's ranks begin to break. Now the name of this game is, and always will be, Action Economy. And strange as it may seem, Fleet is part of that game at 15th level. If this 5 more feet of movement makes it so that Anoki only needs to spend 1 action instead of 2 to get in range for a spell, then this option is more than worth it. As for the first skill that he's increasing as we get into this final stretch, it will be Nature, to make him a legend in it. Finally, at 16th level, Anoki can take Vigorous Anthem, another spell-shaping feat that allows him to grant temporary HP whenever he modifies a Courageous Anthem with it. This is a fantastic fit for his Horn of War, the temporary hit points standing in for the shield that he grants through this effect. We'll then take Titan Wrestler for his skill feat, mainly because he deals and associates with larger creatures, and may need this ability to bring them to heal. Then again, since he's already large, maybe not, but I thought it fit. Rounding out Anoki's ancestry feats is Begin Stampede, a 3-action ability that lets Anoki lead the charge and give his allies the opportunity to follow up. While this is 3 actions, meaning that he can't really use it with anything else, it includes 2 strides, a strike, and also offers a buff to the first attack of allies that charge in after him. Helping this, in hopes of getting a crit on his battle cry that he can follow this up with, is an increase to performance that makes him a legend in it. As mentioned, with any luck he'll be able to critically succeed on this demoralize, and then open with a charge on the enemy while they're vulnerable. While Anoki can try to start a stampede himself, 18th level gives him an opportunity to call for one instead, by taking up Impossible Polymath. This allows him to slot in spells from other traditions, and what's important here is a 7th rank primal spell, known as Summon Stampede. This is an incarnate spell that calls forth a herd to terrify enemies before they trample over their targets. While lacking the knockback of his Savage Stampede, this is otherwise a beautiful fit, and I'm really glad I was able to figure out a way to work it in. Then with his legendary performance, he will take up Scare to Death, because it's the best skill feat in the game, even if we can't make the most out of it since it isn't a demoralize effect. He will have to use his actual intimidation skill when he wants to use it. I will admit, this Colossal Cataclysm Calling Calf isn't quite as durable as I'd like, and since that is the case, he can use Die Hard as his 19th level general feat, which will make him a bit safer should he end up falling. One final skill increase will then make him a legend in athletics. Another option for Anoki's ultimate, at least in the spirit of mimicking its control effects, is Head of the Night Parade, which is admittedly a bit of a stretch and has some pretty minor relation to what he does with his ult. If you don't like this, I would totally understand. I would look into something simpler like Perfect Encore, or maybe the Song of the Fallen just because I think it's cool, and it does match Brutus, another major Mauler character. Finalizing his skill feats is Bonded Animal, so that he can command a pet, though the functionality of this feat is once again questionable. I mainly just think it's fun. And before that fun is done, we have to discuss how this build would look in a free archetype game. Honestly, I think the choice here is pretty simple. I would take up the Mammoth Lord Dedication. This will grant him a single companion rather than a herd, but one that can be focused on and enhanced through his investment here. In particular, I like Staggering Blow to represent his Savage Stampede a bit, since it includes both a knockback and a slowing effect. Additionally, with Anoki being large, Gigantic Megafauna Companion might be the only way that he could actually have a rideable mount. With all that taken into account, let's see a summation of the Stampede Summoning Steer. Anoki the Bloodguard is a Slab Soul Minotaur Bard, which is a bit of a twist, who has the guard background given his training from a young age to fill such a role. He first starts to explore his ability to summon a Stampede through the Summon Animal spell, granted by his Zoophonium Muse. But by using the Multifarious Muse to gain a Polymath Muse, he can utilize Impossible Polymath to slot in the Summon Stampede Primal spell. While lacking some of the knockback effect, this better fits the general concept of his Savage Stampede ability. To cover Raging Stomp, he uses the Raised Slab of his heritage and spells that have an animation that knock enemies around, such as Repelling Pulse, Synaptic Pulse, and Kinetic Ram. The Bard's Courageous Anthem is a fantastic start to representing Anoki's Born to Lead, while the damage reduction comes from another composition cantrip, Rallying Anthem. The enhanced attack speed can come from a simple casting of the Haste spell, especially the heightened version of it. Another enhancement of his Courageous Anthem comes in the form of Vigorous Anthem, granting temporary hit points to his teammates akin to the shield from his Horn of War. It is admittedly though a little bit harder to replicate his War Fury skill. However, Call and Response lets him use allies to extend the duration of his composition cantrips, which does match with the concept at least slightly. Unfortunately, there isn't really a way to capture the enhanced defense rating of this ability. This all comes together to make Anoki a burly bard who enhances his allies through his composition cantrips, ranging from empowering their attacks to bolstering their defenses. He can rely on them thanks to his Call and Response, lock down enemies through spells such as Paralyze and his numerous AoE spells, and then can even call forth Fearsome Fauna with Summon Animal and Summon Stampede. This bullish bard blasts and bludgeons baddies before blowing a ballad that bolsters bandmates and brings about a bevy of boisterous beasts. I talked about it in the Monster Monday video, but I'm going on a vacation starting this weekend. I'll be out of town for a bit, but I will be back June 24th with a new Monster Monday, and then a build for that Friday. But still be sure to let me know what you think of this build and what others you'd like to see in a comment. You can see other builds I've done here on the channel, or even more on the blog, which includes item suggestions and is linked below. Thanks for watching, and have a fantastic Friday.
The horns of war have been sung.